Hello and welcome to Off the Record. The last 2 weeks we spent some time talking about how to interact with the music industry, whether you're in high school, college, looking for an internship or a job. This week we're going to get back to normal. Do you think we can keep it up with cool Descendants puns? I don't know.
That's a thing that I don't know that we're going to be able to pull off, but I could tell you this, if we discuss Taylor Swift again, I could use everything sucks as a pun.
Well, last week was also our first episode on Adobe. Thank you to anyone who listened last week, and if you're listening this week, that's great. For any of our normal, typical listeners that want to listen live, you can go to adobe.com, and we'll be right there. We look forward to keeping that going, but we have a busy week this week with some follow-up to start things off. Jesse, I will once again admit to you that I was wrong when I called the president a lame duck. And
Yeah, go on.
Go on. So this is very good. I don't mind being wrong. I'm happy to be wrong in this case. There's net neutrality had a major win. And so what we'll see is that there will be prohibitions against app blocking, speed throttling, and paid fast lanes on the internet. It won out in a 3-2 vote, so it was a little close, but very, very glad that the FCC and Tom Wheeler and President Obama kind of played hardball and pushed this through when, frankly, many, many people thought this was a dead cause and a forgotten cause before Obama and Wheeler came out with a stronger push for support. This happened really quickly, and I'm very, very happy with it. This is like oddly one of those things where it's like, oh, the government can work.
Yeah, it's a rare moment of, you know what I think has been interesting is that when it comes to internet rights, we've really been seeing the rare moments of blue skies in politics come to be, like when it was like SOPA and PIPA. And it got scary. I don't know if, like, I feel like it was a little underreported, but did you see that, like, Comcast and a couple of the other companies, like, totally astroturfed the submissions for this, and they made, like, over a 500,000 fake submissions to the signatures against...
No way. I did not see that.
It was, like, one of the most underreported things, and, like, I don't like to get into conspiracy theories, but, you know, Comcast does kind of own everyone, and, you know, even the things they did, like, when they were... for Comcast subscribers, where if they went to pro-net neutrality articles, they changed the content to anti ones. No,
there's some really interesting stuff. I was even listening about it yesterday where like Comcast and Verizon and whatever, all like on the internet and to their customers say that they're in support of net neutrality, but they just kind of word it differently for it to be on their terms. It's like this very strange, bizarre world where I don't know, kind of, I think some of it kind of does balance the line of conspiracy or not.
Yeah, I don't think it's conspiracy. I think conspiracy is generally a word tossed around by people who don't understand how the world works. But
that's me.
Well, you're young. You have an excuse. If you're my age and you still are tossing around things and you listen to Alex Jones and InfoWars, you're just an idiot.
I'm a millennial.
You are a millennial. And
in the show notes this week at offtherecord.fm/tag/episodes, there will be some links to net neutrality stuff for anyone that has been a little oblivious to it, so you can check that out. Should also mention that Jesse was wrong in that there is now officially a new global release date for the music industry.
Did I say that would never happen?
Mm-hmm. You did.
Oh, well, that I'm wrong.
All right. So the new...
wait. What I said was that no one will ever actually adhere to it.
Do you think you're still right?
I do think I'm still right.
Who is no one?
Well, you look at what's been going on in the business lately, and people are constantly defying release dates. Remember, like, when T Swift made everybody adjust and do that release date so that Knuckle Puck got to go up. But
that's been something for ages.
Yes, but I think we're seeing a greater disobedience of the Tuesday release date in the streaming era.
Okay.
And, like, so, for example, Kanye, for no reason, just put up his new single yesterday. It's like, or 2 days ago. It's Wednesday now. He put it up on Monday, and it's like, dude, you couldn't wait till Tuesday? Like, really?
Well, I will say that I imagine bad timing will adhere to these dates. Well, we can ask Jeff of Run for Cover next week. This would be a good time to mention that Jeff Casaza from Run for Cover Records will be a special guest on Off the Record next week. That'll be on our Thursday, March 12th episode. and we can ask him about it. But I think we'll be adhering to it. Clearly, this is the thing. Like,
you guys are a bunch of suits. Of course, you adhere to things. That's what suits do.
I quit.
All right, go on. You were making a good point. I'm just being an asshole.
There's a consensus that all major labels will follow this, and on that note, I imagine the larger indies will also follow this, like Epitaph, Hopeless, Rise.
I don't buy it because I think management makes these decisions, and this is something we discussed previously.
To me, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't like so release dates do matter less and less. Like, this is the thing. For the past few years, every album premieres on a website and streams in full a week early, right? So that will still be the case. What was interesting to me was that I actually had a few people write back to me being like, "Oh, this is great. I get paid on Fridays." And I thought that was interesting.
That's a really interesting idea, is that how often does that money that somebody was going to buy the new release on Tuesday with get blown on the weekend on, like, if you're a pop punk kid, on pepperoni pizza?
I don't like pepperoni. We've been through this.
I know.
So I want to ask you two things. So this guy, Mika Singleton at The Verge, wrote an article called "The Music Industry is Taking Away New Music Tuesdays, and It's a Shame." And the basic kind of premise was that the discussions, like having the release day on a Friday, will kill discussions of going to work or going to school on a Wednesday and talking about new music, or that now release dates will have to compete with like the new Marvel movies coming out on Fridays or whatever. And I wrote like a commentary piece and just kind of called it all bullshit, in the sense that, like, when was the last time you talked to a normal human on a Wednesday about how good an album that came out on Tuesday was? And by that I mean, like,
well,
what I was saying before was that all, music streams, it leaks, like, there's no single day for this. When was the last time you went to Best Buy and bought a CD? Like, this is what that guy was talking about. And that has been dead for 10 years already. We're never getting that back.
I mostly agree with you, but I guess my one qualm would be this. So Fridays, as we all know, is the day that you're cramming at work to get your inbox to zero if you're a responsible person like you and I.
Every day I'm at inbox zero.
Oh, dude, I haven't been at inbox zero in 2015, but it's mostly because I'm too busy.
Too busy. I go to school and have 15 jobs, Jesse. I have inbox zero.
Talk to me about the 17-hour day I had yesterday. Anyway, my point would be this. Tuesday, that used to be kind of like the only thing going on. And so while it doesn't matter about to discuss the release date, is you had time to listen to things, you had this, and like, I don't know, I kind of enjoyed that on Tuesday, that, some of the albums would get a discussion on Twitter and everything when everybody actually heard it that didn't see, because not everybody's a nerd and like waits to see whether Stereo Gum or Absolute Punk is like, sure thing. I actually, as a policy, don't even listen to albums before they come out, even if they're like my favorite band. Like, I wait till it's on RDO because it's just easier for me. That, and I'm usually going to have to listen to it while I'm walking or doing something like that, because that's the only time I can listen to music.
Right. Okay, so one thing that was terrifying to me was that Bob Lefsetz wrote an article, and I agreed with it.
I saw you tweeting one of his things. I just thought, I cannot believe you're the last person subscribed to that newsletter.
Well, I last night I tweeted something that was like ridiculous. He like wrote a line that was like, "You cannot compare it to this," and then he spent a paragraph comparing it to that. But anyway, so he wrote that. And this kind of plays into the article from The Verge. And what he said was basically that what Lefsetz wrote was that, new albums are not movies. Like, everything about movies is that you really like front load your sales, getting people to the box office, etc. that first weekend, right? Like, we want to see that the new Avengers breaks every single record for a box office first weekend, right? And for a long time, music was kind of the same way. And what I wrote was that over time, for sustainability, I think we need to move from a model of being front-loaded to one that's long-term. And to get back to that Verge article, Mika Singleton was arguing that, now album release dates are going to need to compete with Marvel movies. I don't think that's the case at all, right? No album, again, will ever sell as much as a Marvel movie will most likely sell in the first weekend. So
that's also not how people's wallets work. Like, it's not like you get paid every day unless you're like a waitress or a waiter, and like and that's just also silly. You prioritize what you want, like, and like the other thing too is like with a Marvel movie, it's like, yeah, that was taking away that money on a Friday that you didn't have when it got to Tuesday anyway.
Right, and so my thing was also that, like, if you're not competing, you shouldn't be worrying about it. The new Knuckle Puck album is not going to compete with Avengers. That's just like,
well, but
there's nothing to compete there, and so
I don't agree with that to an extent, because you're always competing about what gets your money.
Yes,
and a thing, and yeah, other outlets, right? Like, I think what's like been an interesting thing that we've seen is like with the appification, as I've read it called, of like things. Like, I think about how much less money I spend on certain things now, because, for example, I used to have to buy a decibel meter for work every few, let's call it 6 months to a year. And now that's just an app I own forever in my phone that I paid $10 for a few years ago. And that saved me hundreds of dollars. So that freed up money in my budget. Things like that. But like, that Marvel movie's always been that competition, and it doesn't matter what day it goes on. That's the stupid thing about this article, is the day doesn't matter. That's an irrelevant parameter.
And that movie is always going to get more expensive, while music is always going to get cheaper anyway.
I don't know that movies are always going to get more expensive, but that's a longer discussion.
So we should also mention, before we get into our topics for the week, that at some point in the coming episodes of Off the Record, we're going to do a follow-up episode of our Off the Record Goes to College and Get a Job episodes. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. We really appreciate you listening. We don't want to make the show too boring with too many episodes about this, but we have seen questions coming in. So if anyone does have any questions or follow-up or feedback they're looking for in terms of college and getting a job and all that, please either tweet #AskOTR, write an email to us, or go to our website at offtherecord.fm to leave a question or something like that. Same thing goes if you want us to ask anything for Jeff at Run for Cover, just tweet #AskOTR. So for topics this week, there's a festival called Self-Help. It's a festival that's a kind of a joint party of, it's a collaboration between A Day to Remember, the Agency Group, which is a booking agency, and Fly South Music, which is a management company that reps bands like Paramore, A Day to Remember, Sleeping with Sirens, The Devil Wears Prada, and so on. So A Day to Remember unveiled Self-Help Festival a year ago now in California. They had upwards of 10,000 people come, I think, and they headlined the festival. Similarly, they brought it to the East Coast in Philadelphia last October or November. They also headlined it. This year, 2015, the Self-Help Festival is happening on March 7th, a few days after this episode will air. It's still presented by A Day to Remember, but A Day to Remember will actually not be playing the festival. Yet they will be seeing notoriety from it, and also, assuming the festival does well, and from what I've read, the ticket sales are exactly the same as last year, which is very good. A Day to Remember will actually see profit from this festival, even though, again, they won't be playing it. So I wrote a little piece last week about the festival and my thoughts in general about how A Day to Remember are building a hashtag brand for themselves, aside from just releasing music and playing shows, and building a sustainable model for their career where they're making income from outside of just actually releasing music. Jesse, I ultimately think this is a very, very smart thing, and that I haven't seen too many other bands do anything like this in our immediate world. And I don't think there's too many bands that could be doing this right now, but I think they could be soon. I wanted to just get your thoughts.
I should say I used to play a lot of chess.
Really?
Yeah. I used to make bets with the band that if they could beat me in chess, I'd let them bet something against me, but if they could beat me, I'd do days of their record for free.
Wow. My best friend in grade school and middle school, his brother is a grandmaster, very good chess player, and he's a year older than me. But anyway.
Well, I was going to talk about grandmasters, and there's a certain level you get to where you could then start to make some like bigger moves and like really see a farther ahead move. And this is the thing is there's a lot of bands when they start to become one of the bigger bands in their genre that they don't see that grandmaster level move. And this is the grandmaster level move.
The ultimate checkmate.
Yeah, like it's just, I can remember with Man Overboard, there was a very conscious thing as the Defend Pop Punk thing was happening. Like when we kind of came up with the ideas for the podcast and all these things, is like we wanted, I don't want to say it in like such a branding way, but there was definitely some foresight that like we could kind of be the curators of that scene by doing this stuff. And
yeah, like, hey, if this goes well, it'll mean more than just us releasing music. We'll have recognition in other ways.
Yeah, and you see this move being made, like, Metallica did that Orion Festival, which wasn't exactly the best success, but I mean, I'm sure that's also because if you see the way Metallica's been managed by releasing movies that literally make a joke out of them and destroy their brand for years.
We have, of course, most notoriously, the Gathering of the Juggalos.
Yes, but this is kind of the move you make, is like you become kind of the head of the scene, and like this is the way to do all this. Data to remember, we got to remember they are arguably the biggest, let's call them easy core band, mosh meets pop punk band. This is a really smart thing.
What I would say is they're the largest band in our scene that has not seen radio success, and that's how I would break it off in terms of like, they're clearly smaller than Paramore, Fall Out Boy, so on. And all those bands have seen major radio success and have been nominated for Grammys and have won Grammys, for example, right? And so A Day to Remember is a step below that. They're just below that. They're kind of in that, like, obviously Rise Against had major success, right, in terms of radio. But I kind of see them in that route where they are they're a gritty rock band. They're not making pop songs.
And if you think about it, those two bands did an arena tour together.
Exactly. And so A Day to Remember is the largest band in our like touchable music scene. And that's saying something. Like if they can, in the first year of their festival, right, if they could bring over 10,000 people to a weird place in like Southern California, that's a success, right? It's not like the tickets are $10 either. It's a clear success. They have clear power and voice. There's this interview, and it's in the show notes, with everyone involved in the festival, kind of like a roundtable discussion. And it's a benefit for the festival that even if A Day to Remember aren't playing, they can promote it to their millions of followers and say, hey guys, like we're presenting this. Come hang out. Come see all these other bands. We curated this. You love our music. What else can you love by us that isn't our music? And I think that's really fantastic. I wonder, though, I guess I kind of wonder, like, who else could do this and who could do it well? Like, there are bands, like I was just saying, like Fall Out Boy or Paramore that are so huge, I'm sure they could pull something off, right? But below the level of A Day to Remember.
But didn't Paramore have that cruise?
They did have the cruise. That's exactly right. And as far as I know, it went well.
Aside from New Have Found Glory having to deal with their child molester problem right after it.
Yeah. During it, really. What other bands below A Day to Remember could do that? Pierce the Veil, like Kevin Lyman frequently says that Pierce the Veil are the most popular band in the underground music scene of the punk world, even more than A Day to Remember.
My studio's in Union City, New Jersey, which is a really weird town. It's 90% Cuban. You don't see scene shirts a lot in this town, obviously. I see Pierce the Veil shirts like they're like the school uniform at this point.
They're huge, like they're a massive band. They were kind of like neck and neck for a while with All Time Low and Sleeping with Sirens, and I think they have just shot past them. It's kind of crazy. And I give like props to them. I'm not a fan of their music, but that band has been around for a very, very long time. It's not like they've only been around for 5 years. That band has been around for over a decade, like working hard. They have a manager that is an independent woman that's all on her own without a company. Like it's a very interesting and strong team. Yeah, it's very cool. But they're a huge band, and so I could see them doing something like this. The only issue being that like they're kind of close to A Day to Remember in style in a way. Like there's overlap, and so I wonder if there are other bands like if the Wonder Years could do this, for example.
They could.
I don't know, but like they're the type of band because it's in a mostly different genre from that A Day to Remember, Pierce the Veil, Sleeping with Sirens world. So I just wonder where it could go. But I think as a manager, right, like I need to look for Knucklepuck, Sorority Noise, etc. I need to look for other ways to make them money outside of just touring and releasing music. Of course, merchandise is that third proponent, but even beyond that, what's next? And I think as like the music industry continues to shift, that if we can find really good ways to help bands make money when they're sitting at home getting ready to tour for 200 days and like wreck themselves, that's really great for sustainability of any band.
Yeah, I think there's the other teachable moment of this is finding the way that you kind of become the curator and tastemaker of your scene is it's a pretty grandmaster move. And it's so funny every time I say grandmaster, I think of that movie The Master, and it creeps me out. But it really is. That's, I think, one of those things that this will be a basic move in about 10 years, but it's not the most basic move right now. And
yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. That's just the case, and it's gonna. It's hard. You need to have a booking agent. So for like, not to get too inside baseball, but a Day to Remember's booking agent, Dave Shapiro, is like a vice president of his company,
he's arguably
and that's not
the rock star of booking agents at this point.
Yeah, he is. He books every massive band in our world. He books A Day to Remember, Sleeping Sirens, Pierce the Veil, etc. Like Circus Survive, Less Than Jay, like Wonder Years. Like he owns that world. And so it's very easy for him to be like, okay, I'm going to route my big artist tours to go through Self-Help Fest, blah, blah, blah. But for bands that don't have that, for bands that don't have like a booking agent that books every other band, I wonder. We didn't mention it, but you could very easily see Brand New do something like this. Yeah. I don't think they're the kind of band that would do this, but it would be very easy to see Brand New on the other corner of things do their typical like tour lineup and get Brand New, Glassjaw, Manchester Orchestra, Kevin Devine, maybe get someone like Modest Mouse or Built to Spill. Like they could do something like this too. It's just about having enough people on your team with enough power.
I think that's an interesting thing you're saying is you're making it about the team. But I don't think it's always about the team. I think because Band Overboard, when we were doing this at a smaller level, we didn't have the team in place yet. And I think that there was a big thing of like what we were really just doing is we were saying, hey, we're going to be kind of like, I don't want to say the leaders is the wrong word, but like we're going to be a curator and we're going to establish that like we're going to be more proactive than some of the other people in uniting the scene and spreading what we're doing and making it bigger together. And I don't think it's necessarily about like this big team and all that stuff. I think it's a lot of bands that just like when they have any sort of voice with their fans, they can start doing this. Like you can do this even if like your scene is just like you live in Podunk, Iowa, and there's 7 bands. You can be organizing those bands that are like-minded and starting to do this. And like I think back to like when I was young, there was like this scene in the early days of like the emo thing. And when I call it the emo thing, like, there's been many incarnations. This is the like crying on the floor emo era. That is a real thing. You do your Googles.
Okay.
Like Gordon Blanston Records, like Born Against, Rorschach, all these bands, they just kind of united and they'd promote one another. And it was like kind of a scene centered around this club called ABC No Rio. And they united and banded together. I don't think you need to just be on the biggest book age. I think bands should not be discouraged that you could do this at a smaller level and help each other out. And
I definitely agree at the smaller level, but this is kind of a bigger level. And so to just give you an example, like in the interview, which I thought was really smart, this is the week, the festival is the weekend right after Soundwave in Australia.
My God.
And so all these bands have to connect through LA. And so it's perfect for them to stop in LA. So instead of flying a band from New York to LA back to New York, the bands are coming back here anyway and have to stop in LA anyway. So it's a lot cheaper for them, for the festival, to fly these bands, like to chip in a few extra $100 rather than tens of thousands of dollars. Like if it's just a layover in LA, like, hey, do your layover for 2 days instead of just 5 hours, And so that's like really proactive thinking.
I have to say that's not proactive. That's a stroke of genius.
It is. When I read that, and Dave Shapiro said that, the booking agent, and when I read that in the interview, I was like, dude, smart.
Yeah, that's
like
genius.
that saves everyone. Ultimately, like at the end of the day, at the bottom line, tens and tens of thousands of dollars because it's really expensive. I'm booking flights right now for bands to go internationally, and it sucks. And so that's like, that is a stroke of genius, like brilliant strategy move, you know? And that's the kind of thinking where if you want to pull it off on like a major level, I think you need to, like the crack team really helps.
Agreed. So we got into a little tiff in one of our recent episodes where we didn't agree.
Where Jesse was being dumb.
Yeah, that's it.
It might have been one of the college episodes, I guess, where I said people, and I believe this on a whole, at least in our music scene, will often overlook bad-sounding albums or records for music they love. And what categories is that love, I can't necessarily say because it's different for anyone. But for me, like if there's a burning energy in a record that I haven't heard in years or something like that, or you only really hear when bands are in their true youth, I will often overlook a record that kind of sounds shitty if it's incredible. And my prime example of that was Tell All Your Friends. Jesse, I believe, not to also put words in your mouth, disagreed with this.
What's funny is when you characterize it like that, I don't actually disagree with you. I think you said it a little different last time. But what I think is like one of the weirdest things in like a discussion that I don't always love in music is that this record works because it sounds shitty, or this record, you know, it wouldn't work unless it sounded like this piece of shit. It's so impossible to really know which way stuff works. And then, you know, there's also the thing of demoitis. So for anybody not familiar, oftentimes people get addicted when they like a song to the first way they heard it, whether it's the superior or inferior version of it.
So is your concern with what I said last week was that, or like people in general will be like, no, don't worry if it sounds shitty. If it's great, it won't matter. And is your concern that people...
I just think it's impossible to ever know. I think my concern is that people get aligned with the idea that records couldn't have been better with better production and that the shittiness does it. Like, there's so many ways you could present a song as a producer. Like, you know, there's so many times I've even, you know, one of the things actually I don't think gets discussed a lot is this is like one of those secrets of recording, and I often have to discuss. I'm right now producing a full-length record with a band called Stories of Living, and we just had to go through this, is that one of the secrets to making a good record is admitting when you didn't nail the song and then going and re-recording it mid-record. And it's kind of something that's died with how shitty budgets are these days, and with the fact that a lot of people aren't formally trained in record production anymore. And like, you know, I was lucky to be like one of the last generations where I got to have solid mentorships with people who were making classic records in like the 70s and 80s. This is something that commonly happens, like on a Bruce Springsteen or a Fleetwood Mac, or like these massive records, or even on an American Idiot, where they redid the whole entire record over. You often sit there and you go, you know what? This didn't work. It's time to redo it. I think there's just this thing of that. I hear oftentimes, like, I hear the demo, then I hear the version we didn't keep, and I hear the other version we didn't keep, and then I hear the version where we nailed. It's so weird to me when people discuss records as if that's the only way it worked, and it works because it's shitty, and it works because it's this. When there's so many ways you could do a song that might be better or worse, and it's also weird to judge, like, which way is the ultimate, because, like, do we say that the ultimate is the one that people like the most? Because if that case, then we have to admit Ariana Grande is an exceptional artist.
I mean, ultimately, like, the people saying most of this stuff have no idea what they're talking about, right?
That's basically what I didn't like, is that the characterization I felt like you were saying is that, like, we know an absolute truth over which version of a record is good. Like, I even think about Devil and God. Now, so famously, they recorded that record with Dennis Herring. Initially, Dennis Herring, for anybody who doesn't know, is like this massively, in indie rock, he's a guy who spins gold pretty much every time he touches something. And they didn't use that version. They went back to Mike Sapone, and like, I can remember on the Absolute Punk threads where they got done recording at Sweet Tea, and like there was all this like stuff that they weren't happy with it, and you know, everybody hypothesized like that this was the right version. And like, to me, when I listen to Devil and God, while I think it's an amazing record, I'm like, man, there's a lot of things that I think could have been way better about this record if it was tracked different. That's my personal opinion, and I'm somebody who does get to see a little bit more of what the possibilities are. But I just feel like there's no way of ever knowing, because we don't get to hear choices. And like, it's so rare you get to hear 5 different people produce the same song, or 5 people mix the same song.
Yeah, so I guess a little more of what I was saying was mostly just that, like, I wish Tell All Your Friends sounded better, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that would ruin the integrity of the album. It seems like you're telling me it probably wouldn't.
I think the problems with Tell All Your Friends are like weird ones where there's like a weird hiss and then like the cymbals are just EQ'd. You're like, how much cocaine was being done to think that much treble was acceptable?
So yeah, to me, it's more that, I love the energy of Tell All Your Friends. I think there's still incredible energy on Where You Want to Be, and that record, whether you love it or not, sounds pristine next to Tell All Your Friends, right? Or my other example that I like in my head is that I'm a really big fan of Armor for Sleep's Dream to Make Believe, but it sounds very like sophomoric.
That and What to Do When You're Dead are two atrocious sounding records.
I think What to Do When You're Dead is an incredibly sounding record.
Oh, man.
But like
there's no bass on it.
I don't know. Bass doesn't matter, man.
Alienating.
Have you heard that Meghan Trainor song? It doesn't matter.
Oh, Jesus.
That's a real good. That's a pop culture reference by me. I didn't know who that was 2 weeks ago.
That's a rare one right there.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is that you listen to those two records next to each other. One record sounds like it's real, and one doesn't. Whether there's bass or not. And we just see this over time. If like full collapse to War All the Time, like the bands can still keep energy. And
ironically, those records are also the same production team behind Tell All Your Friends.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You can get better over time without losing energy and like greatness in your music. And to me, but however, what I was saying was that like, I will also overlook it if the record is incredible. Yeah. It may be a bummer, like especially when you have 3 new records and you're like, damn, that first one sounds bad. Like it's a little funny now to listen to the Upsides by the Wonder Years because Soupy did not know how to sing then, and he completely changed his recorded singing style on the Wonder Years' 2 most recent records, and it's kind of jarring.
Well,
but
I think that so we're also getting to another interesting thing, which is that Tell All Your Friends, I would actually say, has incredible performances, which is really a part of production. Yeah. But the mix and the engineering is atrocious. And it's the same thing with Upsides, too. Now, granted, Soupy did become a better singer, and they worked with Steve Evans as opposed to, I can't even remember who produced the Upsides, but whoever engineered and mixed the Upsides did not exactly kill it on the engineering side, whereas Steve Evans is a guy who's been making classic engineered records since before you were born.
Me or just everyone, Jesse?
Since before you were born. I was definitely born. I mean, I also, full disclosure, this is one of my best friends, so.
Conflict of interest.
Yes. There's a thing here that we're also not discussing is that there's 2 nuances to a lot of this stuff, and it's like the same thing. Like, Devil and God has these incredible performances, but there's like things on the engineering side. I'm just like, oh my God, why is there this much fucking ratty mid-range? Like, why does that sound like that? And same thing, like the hiss all over Tell Your Friends. That's engineering, not production, really. Now, some would say that the producer should have made the call that we need to re-record this so that it didn't have the fucking insane hiss every time the vocal went on and teach somebody how to do gain staging. But my digression here is that there also is a difference between engineering and production. Like that Dream to Make Believe record, I would say that like there's great performances on that, but that's before... I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but Ariel Reichard, I think I want to say, is like, really got good at engineering. And like, not to say that I was born as a great engineer either. Like, I have some records I look back and I despise the tones on. There is a difference in that. I don't think people always separate them. So maybe that's the lesson to be learned from.
So we've had this one topic kind of hanging out in our show notes for a while. Noisy published a pretty enjoyable piece called "The Life Cycle of a Punk Band," and this was posted kind of just out of happenstance during the same week or two where the Wonder Years played their 10-year anniversary shows. And if you go to the link in the show notes, and you can find a Dan Ozzie article for Noisy, it kind of a commentary on how you are punk at age 18 and from every year after that until 41. And then what I had noted down for us in regarding the Wonder Years was that they just played 10-year anniversary shows for 3 really big albums, but that first album that was really big only came out 5 years ago. So like what was going on those first 5 years? Jesse, I assume this life cycle of a punk band is just you. I'm looking at age 41 now, and that's how old you are.
Yeah. That would make you in your mid-20s.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah, exactly.
My birthday's coming up.
I know.
Next month, I am I'm very old.
Yeah, that whole 22. Wow.
Anyway.
But I think this is a really interesting thing, and this is something I see I grew up obviously a punk kid, and when I was young in the punk scene, like I think of a band like the Bouncing Souls. The Bouncing Souls when I was young are like a Plow United, who were like my two favorite bands that were local. They would put out, in between albums alone, they'd put out like 3 to 5 7-inches. There was this constant stream of music, and like Screeching Weasel could sometimes turn out like, almost 30 songs in a year. Now, granted, these were pretty simple songs compared to the poeticism of a Wonder Years song. And I'm being serious when I say that too, I might add. Some people...
Jesse is such a jerk
because you know what it is? Honest to God, I am hanging around so many people who demean pop punk's integrity that I feel like I say this sometimes. But so my point is, I listen to a lot of dance music now as an adult, and what's very common for a dance group is that you will not release your LP. You'll release just singles and remixes for maybe the first 5 years of your career. And then you will drop this full length, and that is expected to be your stroke of genius. But it's very common that you're finding your sound. Like, I think of some of my favorite dance records of recent years, and it's like I'm usually waiting years to the point that like I forget about the band for a little while. Like, there's this group RAC that just put out their first full length last year. 2 years ago was this band Classics. I've been listening to these bands since like 2006 or 7, and it took till 2014 or 13 for them to drop full lengths. And
outside of Dance World, and this will probably be the only time I discuss hip hop on this podcast. I have a friend that I went to high school with named Miles Mills, and he's a hip hop artist under the moniker Skizzy Mars, and he's actually seeing great success right now, which is kind of cool. And he started getting into hip hop like publicly when we were in high school, probably our junior or senior year, and then he got signed to a label, and now he's doing his thing. But it's been 4 or 5 years since that started, and he just now released his first music that was on iTunes. Like, he had released a bunch of like one-offs and mixtapes and remixes beforehand for a period of 4 years, but they waited. His label was like, we're not going to put any of your stuff on iTunes until just a month ago. And it sold a lot. It sold like 15 or 20,000 copies first week. And it was like I follow him on Twitter, and it was like a big deal for him to like officially have something real, because he felt like he needed to work up to that point where like there's enough steam behind me where I can drop something real now. And that kind of reminded me what you were saying about the dance thing.
So here's an interesting thing between that and what I'm kind of saying, that I actually don't think it's smart to keep it to yourself for all these years. I think you should be releasing stuff like just as the Wonder Years did. Like, they had split 7-inches and things like that. I don't always disagree with the thing that maybe you wait on a full length. I think a lot of bands rush into full lengths.
Absolutely.
And I happen to think, and people get mad when I say this, that the dance world is where a lot of the innovation in the music business happens. And like, I do think there's a thing of like finding your sound, finding this. But then the other thing is like with punk is there's tons of people who will appreciate your amateurism at first. I think back to even like Hung Up on Nothing stuff that we did with Man Overboard compared to Real Talk. It's like, there's tons of people who appreciate that more, even though it's much more sophomoric than Real Talk. And like, I think that's one of the nice things. Punk appreciates some amateurism, so I don't always think that that's the worst thing to just start putting stuff out and doing things. But I do think there's a lesson to be learned that for most bands, this does not happen overnight. There are exceptions where bands put out strokes of genius immediately, but I don't think you should hide your music for the world and not put it on iTunes.
I agree. And that's kind of also where we can like see Spotify or Rdio or whatever being kind of like a marketing tool for your music and such. But Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like every band is different. Like, I'm glad that it's not a set model for every single band, but it's to me, it's like so interesting that like so for Knuckle Puck, they're recording their debut LP right now, right? And they've been a band. I've been working with them for 18 months, and in that time, we released 2 EPs and a 7-inch and a split rather. And however, like Sorority Noise, another band I manage, in that same time they released one full-length record and were about to gear up to release their second. And that second record will actually come out before Knuckle Puck have released their first, right? And they're completely different bands that don't sound alike and are on different trajectories, but their models are completely different. And to me, it's like, it's pretty interesting to just think about it that way, and just that, like, it would be really helpful if, you know, it was like, okay, every band is going to release 3 splits and, whatever, and then get to this point of a record or a second record. But it's so curious to see what works and what doesn't, and how, you know, maybe if Knuckle Puck did what Sorority Noise did, it wouldn't have worked out. And maybe if Sorority Noise did what Knuckle Puck did, it wouldn't also be working out. It's just so different for every band for reasons that we can't necessarily put our fingers on.
So I think, yet again, just like our last discussion, we're getting into some intangibles you can never see. But I think that there is a toxic thought that happens. I even see it in the questions we get for this podcast that should be said, that there's a lot of time where people are looking for that route to success and like they're going to emulate it. Like I always like joke that like my generation would like read Rolling Stone and hear these stories of like how a band came up, and then you'd cling to that one way the band came up and you'd try to emulate that. And that's not the way to do it. Like the real way to do it is, one, to just bust your ass no matter what you're doing, and pick a plan and get to work. Like Alan Douches, who's I think we've mentioned on the podcast before, who's the mastering engineer for most of your record collection, Fearless, he has this great thing saying called pick a format and get to work. So what that means is people often would sit around like, should I use Logic? Should I use Pro Tools? Should I use GarageBand? Should I use Ableton?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I see where you're going.
Just pick something, but then don't sit around slaving over it, wondering if you're doing the right thing, wondering if you're doing it. What's much more important is just fucking working and learning how to do something. Whether you choose Pro Tools, Logic, or Ableton, as long as you're working all the time and you're doing good work and you're doing good self-analysis and you're adapting as you see yourself doing things wrong, you're going to go a lot farther than the person who's sitting around debating which road to take all day.
We talk about that all the time in different models. Even like when someone asks me like how they should start a blog or like what they should write for or whatever, it's just like, no, do it, get better, and then think about it. Kind of the same thing.
After you've gotten to work, do some self-analysis. But here's the key is, just start doing something. Whatever feels best, just run to it and go. You don't necessarily need to marry the first girl you see, but start dating and figuring out the dumb things you're doing along the way. Because boy, have I been doing that for a long time.
Well, you are 41, as this punk article said.
Oh, my Jesus. Anyway, we have a lot of user questions, don't we?
We do. People love us. They've been tweeting #AskOTR. Leaving questions in our Tumblr and all that. We're very loved. I feel
pound
loved.
Sign, not hashtag.
Pound sign. Bringing it back, Jesse. Bringing it back to a time where I've never even used the pound sign in my life. So we'll just start going through these questions. This is from @penguin_by_dom. @penguin_by_dom. I'm in a small band and we want to put music up on Spotify. What is the best way of doing that? Is it CD Baby or is there a better way? I use TuneCore for Bad Timing and Knuckle Puck and some of my other bands. I've never used CD Baby. I don't have experience there. TuneCore has worked well. There are expenses with all of this stuff, but I like TuneCore, for example.
Well, it's not CD Baby. That's my first answer. TuneCore is great if you don't care about your money and you're not going to put out constant releases. DistroKid, if you're somebody who's going to put out tons of rarities, tons of singles, and you don't have a lot of money, you don't know how they're going to sell, DistroKid's the best value for your dollar because it's $20 per year for as many songs as you want to put up.
But, that's solid. I will look into that.
But it doesn't get you to all the services that TuneCore does. So it gets you to all the big services. So you're on Beats, you're on Spotify, you're on Rdio, you're on iTunes, you're on Amazon, Google Play. But That's really it. TuneCore gets you on every single thing. And if you're planning on a big release, that is worth it to be on every single thing. That really helps. Like, always being available helps. And, TuneCore carries a lot heavier fees, but I will say this, it is worth it when you're really trying to make a huge impact.
Right. And what's also nice about TuneCore is that you can pay like 10 extra bucks, and forever your release will be added to every new service. So if 10 more streaming services popped up next week and they all became popular for whatever reason, they would all be added for just that one-time cost of $10.
Yeah.
And automatically does it without you asking as well.
Yeah, that's
which
great.
is nice. Yeah.
And that's really what TuneCore provides. There's also tons of other services, but I really would say that your choice is between those two because the rest of them aren't very good.
Yeah.
I hope I don't get bad emails from people I know about saying that.
You're going to get terrible emails.
Oh, man. The next question is the rollout on a split different from an EP-LP? What is the best way to roll out a split? And this is from @PimpDaddyTom.
I love Pimp Daddy Tom. I don't know who you are. I would say, yeah, absolutely. So bad timing right now is we have a whole buttload of splits this year, 6 with Kevin Devine and other artists. And what's really cool and part of why Kevin is doing this is that like the 3 artists we've confirmed so far are Matthew Cause from Nada Surf, Meredith Graves from Perfect Pussy, and Tiger Straw. Those are all 3 very different bands with 3 different fan bases and 3 different kind of press circles around them. And so to give you like a short example, we want to leverage those different outlets for Kevin. So Kevin doesn't get a lot of love on Pitchfork. Meredith Graves has a recurring recurring column on Pitchfork, and they love Perfect Pussy there. So if we can, for example, get the first stream of our song with Meredith Graves on Pitchfork, and in it says has a new split coming out with Kevin Devine on Bad Timing Records on April whatever, that's great. That's really good for us. And so I think the thing about splits is like ultimately, and unless you're just best friends, like there can often be like a point of leverage that you're reaching for. So Knuckle Puck did a split with Neck Deep, and when I came up with the idea, it was like, well, one, we're going on tour with Neck Deep, so this is a great promotional tool for the tour to sell well. 2, Neck Deep are a lot larger than us. If we can get our name in front of all their fans, it's going to long-term make a big difference, and it has. And so I think with a split compared to an LP or a normal EP, you're seeing what the other band can do for you and what you can do for the other band, and you should take advantage of what that means.
Well put.
Thank you. So from @RobinsonTrent, Jesse, I know you are... Actually, that's not what the question says. What bands does Jesse recommend we watch in 2015? Jesse's very hip to the ground, much more hip than Zach's mediocre Property Zach blog. What does Jesse recommend?
I have no life, so I have no recommendations because all I do is work. Here's what I recommend. I'm making a great record with Stories of Living. I'm making a great record with Hayata. I'm making a great record with Romp. I don't know anything else to recommend because I have no time to watch TV or listen to music because all I do is produce records all day.
Jesse, should I recommend to you Guardians of the Galaxy 2?
Oh my God.
I'm sure you'll love it.
Oh my God.
As some quick follow-up, we should mention that Jesse actually did end up watching Guardians of the Galaxy, and he hated it. Did you turn it off?
I think I got halfway through, and I said, I've done my due diligence. I hate this so much. There's nothing that movie could have done to make me like it after I was halfway through it because it was so stupid.
We just lost all of our Adobe listeners right now. I will take over for Jesse. Some bands that I see doing big things this year are Runaway Brother, Beach Slang, a band that Jesse likes.
I love that band.
This is a conflict of interest, but I think we're going to be doing some very good stuff with Sorority Noise this year, and I'm personally really excited because they made a record that has blown me away, and I'm stoked to see where that goes. But I think Runaway Brother, they're a Tiny Engine band. I don't think their record is as, like, quote-unquote, game-changing as the Hotelier record or maybe even as good as that Soma's record is on Tiny Engines, but that's kind of the next thing out of that factory, and I'm interested to see what it can do So maybe Jesse can answer this one from our friend Inglorious Pulp. What new directors' movies do you recommend that are worth watching, Jesse?
All right, I'm going to do directors because I follow directors. Whoever is the guy who did Upstream Color, that guy rules. Any Lars von Trier movie that you haven't seen, you should always see.
The director of Upstream Color was Shane Carruth.
That's it. Both of his movies that I've seen were amazing. Michael Haneke, who directed Funny Games and Caché, I think those are two of the best movies out there. I started watching Citizen 4 the other night. That movie is absolutely amazing.
I've seen a lot about that.
Yeah, it's the Edward Snowden story.
Oh.
It's really, really, really good. What else? If you haven't watched all of John Cassavetes' work, if you haven't watched all of Ingmar Bergman's work, those are great places to start. Noah Baumbach, I think every movie he's ever made has been amazing. I think that's it for who I really love these days.
Who you're really into right now. So next question was, what's the biggest mistake you see journalists making? What mistake should a budding music journalist avoid? I would say, and my biggest mistake, I've said this a bunch, but the biggest mistake I made in my early years was just leaking news that didn't need to be leaked. And what does that mean? So if Knuckle Puck are going on a tour and you see that information leaking out through bands in town before the band has announced a tour, don't leak it, because it's going to piss off the manager, the publicist, and the label. And when you email that publicist asking to interview the band 3 weeks later, they're going to laugh at you and tell you no. What I would do instead, for example, if you see that happening, draft a news post that says Knuckle Puck going on tour with X. Make all your news posts ready, and then when the full dates are announced, post it and be the first one. You're going to not make enemies that way, and you're also going to see more traffic from it if that's what you care about. On that note, I'd also say, don't have traffic be your bottom line.
That's great advice, yeah.
What should be your bottom line is improving every day, every week, every month, and also, thinking about what's going on. It's okay if you're just posting news or posting reviews, but look at me 5 years later. I don't want to be doing that so much anymore. I want to be giving my thoughts. And so what does it mean if, to harken back to what we were saying before, what does it mean if A Day to Remember are not playing their festival yet tens and thousands of tickets are being sold? What does that mean for the future of A Day to Remember, the future of that genre of music? And so I would say just continue to try to get better at what you're doing each week or month, and then also start thinking about things in a bigger picture and how you can further condense that down the line.
When are you going to change the name of the blog to Deep Thoughts with Zach Cirillo?
Well, right now I bought a domain for $80 yesterday, so I might as well tag on another.
You paid a lot of money for a domain, huh, dog?
It's the FM domains, man.
Oh man, that's
the FM domains really cost you.
I did not know it. So I'll give one piece for the budding journalists. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on is showing off my big vocabulary. So I had the misfortune of having to rewrite an article I wrote 6 years ago. Seeing how much I thought people were going to be impressed with the fact that I know lots of words that get you points on Scrabble made me really depressed about my writing. If you have a great vocabulary, you don't need to do it. Use words that people understand, and it's much more effective, and people will still like you anyway.
Well, I guess I'll dumb down my website for you.
It's not dumbing down. You don't need to write like a fifth grade idiot. You don't need to pontificate. How about that?
Yes, I know what you mean. You guys have said that one of the best ways to get press on bigger sites is to start by getting buzz on small ones. What small sites would you recommend to start with? What are the ones you guys watch? This is a good question.
This is a great question.
So I think there's a few different angles you can go on. There is the very notorious to this podcast Defend Pop Punk group. That's not a website, but it's a community that has 30,000 people in it. And if you can get a portion of those 30,000 people to like and care about your band, the people in that group tend to be very loud, obnoxious, and terrible. And that means great things for your music. Getting your music in general out there to a condensed amount of people is a good thing. And having those people care and want and get in there early and want to promote it is a good thing. Beyond that, there are small sites like City of Punk, New Noise. There are not a ton of small sites right now, I guess, but there's still like the Property Stack Showcase feature. There's our best friends at Pup Fresh, Mightier Than Sound, Modern Vinyl. If you're doing anything physical with vinyl or cassettes, there are avenues. I actually do think for the first time in a while, there's a lot less smaller sites than there used to be, because for a while there, like, it felt like I was in competition with everyone, not in a bad way, but just, friendly competition. And I don't really know that that's the case anymore. There's still Alter the Press. If you're from the UK, there's a good website called Already Heard. Anything for you, Jesse?
Yeah, I have a simple recommendation, because not everybody is a pop punk band that listens to this. What you should do is there's this service called mention.net. And what you do is you input a few band names into it that are similar to you. Some could be bigger. I'd recommend some about your size as well. And you put them in Dimension and you watch what comes up. Lots of smaller sites that are similar to you will then come up, and those are the sites you should be hitting up to get some attention from. I do this all the time. You can even do, for example, like the girl I'm dating's in fashion, and we do it with designers so that she can find who to solicit for that. You can do this with anything. This is the simplest technique for getting press.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's how I did all the press for Man Overboard early on, is I used Google Alerts because they used to work better back then. Now Google Alerts are terribly dumbed down and basically useless.
Yeah, like Knucklepuck have them on their Gmail account for their, like, to the band email, and I get them all the time, and it's just like, this is nothing. This is not useful for me.
Yeah, getting that to your Gmail is one of the most annoying wastes of time of your day every day.
Every single day. Cool. So we got a email to us directed at me asking if I could see Lamo Records being the next kind of run for cover records. So the kind of, like we talk about a lot, there are tiers of bands that come up in the same era, and like, so is Lamo the next possible label like Run for Cover Records? I should say that I am best friends with the people at Lamo Records. I pay one of their founders to do a lot of bad timing stuff that I can't do because she's great, and so my opinion is colored. I would say that there's a few labels in that world, and an indie world, and this is a thing. I don't think Lamo Records is the Run for Cover Records of 2011 and 2012, but they're kind of they could be like the Run for Cover that we see right now, where Run for Cover is a lot indier. There's another label on the West Coast called like Lauren Records, and that's a similar thing. I think yes. I think we haven't yet hit the next class of labels that are like coming up. Tiny Engines is in this kind of middle ground where they've been a label as almost as long as Run for Cover, but they only got a lot of buzz next year, right?
Last year,
last few years. Not to like toot my own horn, but like in terms of smaller labels that are like kind of doing stuff, I don't think it's like horrible of me to say that like Bad Timing is in that class. Maybe
it's accurate.
We'll see where it goes, and that's the same thing for Lamo. Like clearly they started modern baseball's career, and they have a really good band right now called The Weeks, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, there's also tons of labels who just have a good year or two and then don't really have one again.
Right, then they peter out. So we'll see. This could be the last good year of Bad Timing. Who knows? So yeah, I don't think, like, I think we need a few more labels to emerge that have some staying power. Like if you think about the last class, it was Run for Cover, Pure Noise, No Sleep, and Top Shelf. And I don't think we have I think we need another year or two or three to kind of see what the next kind of class of labels that are building up are. But if you look at the landscape, like Jesse was saying, so many labels teeter out. You know, on the on the larger indie label field, there is Hopeless, Epitaph, Rise, Equal Vision. All those labels have been around for a very, very long time now. In between, nothing really sticks out until you get to sort of that Run for Cover era. So what's next? I don't know, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah, good assessment.
Yeah, and then 2 questions for Jesse before we wrap it up. This might be a stretch because you've probably been using expensive equipment for a long time. Don't think that's a stretch. Jesse is a cheap-ass individual.
Truth be told, I use very inexpensive stuff as well as very stupidly expensive stuff.
Well, this question might be for you. Would you have any recommendations on mic kits around $200 to $400? I'm on a budget but want to get started recording in my garage. Also, do you have any thoughts on free DAW programs like LMMS, Reaper, Audacity, etc.? And then this nice fellow compliments us on our podcast, so thank you.
That is very nice. So mic kits. Mic kits are Satan incarnate. They're too cheap to give you a bad result. If your option is that you can go to record drums at someplace else, you should do that with somebody who has decent mics, because I don't think there is any good mic kits. They all sound so terrible that you're working against what they're doing instead of having them work for you. What you should instead take that $200 to $400 and do, buy a Rode NTK for your vocals. It's, if you think of it this way, there's platinum records like Panic at the Disco's first record that's done through that mic. That mic can get you something great. Get a great mic pre. That's the most important piece of gear after your monitors is a great mic pre. Chameleon Lab 7602 is my favorite cheap mic pre. And then, but my recommendation is a SM57, which costs $100, records guitar better than any mic. It's what I use to record guitar in almost every record I've ever made. A Rode NTK will do your vocals great. A Shure SM7 can also do vocals great, especially if you scream, and that records bass great. Once you have those three mics, you can record all the instruments in a rock band after drums. Go record drums somewhere else until you have the money to buy good drum mics. And even that, good drum mics don't cost that much. SM57 for the snare. Sennheiser 609s for the toms are used on tons of huge records. A D112 is used on tons of classic records. Overheads, buy a second NTK. I use 2 Rode NTKs for drum overheads on every record I do. And then some good room mics, which can be a little bit more. And you're set to go. Just then we have to think about all the other thousands of pieces of things you have to buy aside from microphones.
I think I just fell asleep. What happened?
Yes. And then the last question is, I don't think Reaper, Audacity, and LMMS are good investments. There's much better DAWs that cost no money. Pro Tools 12 is just about free at this point. Logic costs $200. It is as opposed to the $65 for a Reaper or Audacity, I think they are. Spend the extra $130 and get a real program that's supported well, is stable, and developed well. Whatever one of these programs you learn is going to be what a lot of your creativity hinders on. It's worth it to just take that tiny, tiny extra investment and get something real. Both Logic or Pro Tools or Ableton, all three of those programs, learning them, you will be in great shape to do tons of great things. Don't cheap out on that. It's one of the most important things. Also, don't cheap out on your monitors, but we're going to talk about that on a later episode.
Monitors, man, so important.
We're going to go down that road.
Okay, so very quickly before we tidy things up, some recommendations. I went to the West Coast this past week. It was warmer there. Grace and I watched The Theory of Everything, and we really enjoyed it. I was super sad.
It's a sad story.
Yeah, I didn't cry, but I was almost there a bunch, and it's very rare for me to cry during a movie or TV or anything. And it was just a lot of
you the king of emo. It's rare for you to cry during a movie.
Yeah, I can't maybe once a year. I don't know.
I didn't know I was more emo than you.
Definitely more emo. I mean, you're so old. You have nothing to live for. You're so old.
I cried when Slater-Kinney played Good Things on Friday.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you about that show. You can talk about it in a second. So yeah, I really like The Theory of Everything. We also watched House of Cards in about 20 hours, so that was good and cool. That's over now. Head down until Orange is the New Black is on. But anyway, yeah, I would definitely recommend The Theory of Everything. I'm going to watch Foxcatcher next, and I'm looking forward to that. What about you, Jesse?
I won't ever be watching Foxcatcher.
Okay.
I'm going to recommend a record I produced by a great band called The Strange Times. I've longed for a good political punk band in the vein of Anti-Flag to be around, and these guys are like a cooler, weirder version of That Meets Waves, and I'm really psyched on this record. It's called Eat Your Leaders, and by The Strange Times. Yeah, I saw Slater-Kinney on Friday, and it was one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Really?
Oh, my God.
And so that was at Terminal 5, right?
Yeah, it was just, I mean, they were amazing when I saw them back in the day, but they've just, it's so funny because they're thought of as this novelty band because Carrie's now famous for her comedy, but this is also a girl who's like been playing guitar like she was Jimmy Page for like a decade. Like she's just insane on guitar. Janet Weiss is one of the best drummers, and Corinne Tucker, the melodies she comes up with is just like, there's some of the most insane vocal melodies you'll ever hear. And when they played Good Things, which is probably the song I've turned to during every breakup of my life since I was like a teenager, it brought something out in me.
And it was packed out, right?
You want to know how packed it was? I opted out of getting beer mid-set because I was like, oh, hell no, I can't move. I mean,
Wow.
For me to do that, that's saying something.
I wouldn't like that band, right?
I can't see you like, I mean, if you're going to try Slater-Kinney for your music taste, I'm going to recommend you listen to Call the Doctor.
That's
Not
like
the
an older record?
Yeah, not the newest one. That's the one. It's funny because watching it, I was like, I forgot like what an influence their records had on that like kind of American football style of guitar playing. Because like the other thing about Slater-Kinney is to remember there's no bass and it's just noodly guitar.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's been
So
lost.
it's like an Armor for Sleep record. Sorry.
Yeah, it was very. Call the Doctor is a classic record. I would.
Do you think they'll keep like being a band?
I'm sorry, shouldn't be recommending Call the Doctor. Go check out Dig Me Out. I'm thinking of this wrong. Yes, supposedly they are going to keep being a band. I don't know if that's public knowledge, but I have a friend on the inside.
Of course. Mm-hmm. And the bass player, naturally.
Yes.
Well, thanks for listening to Off the Record this week. To keep up with us, you can check in at offtherecord.fm or twitter.com/offtherecord.fm. Jesse's on Twitter at Jesse Cannon. I'm at Zezarillo. You can listen in with us live at idobi.com, and you can even give us a rating at iTunes or ask us a question by tweeting #AskOTR. Thank you. We'll be back next week.